sugar craving. There is absolutely a link between what they would call metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance, increased dysregulation of blood sugar, all kinds of different kinds of words, but between that and kidney stones. So we know from the kidney stone world, there is some link between what oxalate's doing to us and our ability to handle the carbs in our diet. And what I would say there in terms of sugar craving is that for many of us, not all, but for many, when oxalate's on the move and your body's dealing with more oxalate, there can be this corresponding, I'm going to say, appetite regulation issue. So what I noticed when I first went low oxalate, and I tried not to stress out about it too much because I was a lot heavier at that point too, but I would notice I'd eat a meal and like 15 minutes later, I could be cruising my cupboards looking for something to eat. And I didn't even know what I wanted. I just knew I was hungry. Like there was this weird appetite dysregulation. It was like I could eat a whole meal and yet I wasn't sort of full and yet I didn't know what I needed. Like it was like the whole system was a little befuddled. And one of the things that I did have was some distinctive cravings for certain kinds of foods, usually sugar, but not sugar on its own. It would be sugar with fat or sugar with, something, right? So I would be craving more likely like a sweet treat. And the kinds of sweet treats I would crave would be the kinds of things where you've got a combination of sugar, but with fat. And that was the one that would really mess me up. The interesting thing about this is that I've been reading research recently because I've been probably pre-diabetic for the last 15 years. I didn't realize I was pre-diabetic until maybe the last 5. And so I've gone to a very low carb way of eating, but I would still have problems. Like if I had just the tiniest bit of extra carb, let's say my family is over here on a Sunday evening and we're having dinner together and I have like some strawberries and I would have strawberries maybe with a little bit of erythritol because it's kind of a treat. That could mess me up for 2 or 3 days. It's almost like my blood sugar would just roll and the cravings would just run and I would have to hang on kind of with my discipline and my fingernails to make through it until everything settled down again. And that's been really miserable. It's been one of the reasons why I've gone to an almost fully carnivore diet. I'm not obsessive about it. I'm not one of those people who's like red meat, water, and salt and nothing else. But my carb tolerance has been so bad. So I started to see research on a product called allulose. Allulose is a natural sugar that's usually in smaller quantities in our food. And essentially, allulose is doing a lot of the things that Ozempic is doing. So if you've heard about this diabetes drug, which seems to be taking the world by storm, one of the things that Ozempic does that people get really excited about is it helps to regulate appetite. People get less hungry, but it's also, for people who are diabetics in particular, very helpful because it brings down blood sugar. It seems to bring down some of the insulin resistance. It's not a long-term fix. The research doesn't look good for that. It looks like you start to lose muscle mass and a bunch of things that are not good for you, but that's the drug. The interesting thing about allulose is that it seems to regulate appetite. It helps to regulate insulin. It brings down blood sugar spikes. It does a lot of the same things that some of these medications do. And this particular insulin expert who I follow, his name's Benjamin Bickman. He's a PhD out of, let me think. Well, he's in Utah. So I think it's Brigham Young, but I'm not sure. And he's been doing all kinds of research on allulose, and allulose looks to be the real thing. So I've tried it. I've tried it at the doses that are recommended, and I tried it with my beloved berries because I wanted to see whether or not I could sit down and eat a half cup of berries and be okay. So first time I tried it, that's what I did. I used the scoop that came with the allulose. I put that on the berries. So I didn't get the full dose of the scoop, which is kind of what they recommend, but it seemed like a lot of allulose and I didn't really want that much. So it was a couple of scoops on the berries that were for everyone, but I had a half cup of berries and nothing happened. And I went, wow, that's great. Like if I can sit down and have a half cup of berries with my family as a treat on a Sunday, that would be perfectly happy for me. So then I thought, okay, let's try it a couple days in a row because sometimes things don't continue to work. And I'm sure you guys have had that experience too. So I did not want to find out, oh yeah, it works once and then it never works again. So the next night, I think I had it in some coffee. And I would not normally have coffee at night. And son of a gun, it still worked. And then I tried a third time when I sacrificed myself for science. I had something that I knew would set off my appetite, and I let that happen. I let my appetite get dysregulated. Not my favorite thing. And then the next meal that I ate, oh, and I had, what did I have? I had white chocolate or something. It was yummy. I would do it again now that I've done this, but not all the time. Anyway, so I had white chocolate. Appetite started to roll. I was hanging on by my fingernails to get to supper without trying to eat everything that was in our fridge. And then at supper time, I had allulose with a cup of coffee. And everything settled down. My appetite was fine. I went through the evening. The next day I was fine. So allulose looks like it's the real thing for sugar craving. And what I like about it for using it for sugar craving is that it tastes like sugar. So if you're having a sugar craving, particularly if your system is maybe a little bit dysregulated, and you don't have to be hugely dysregulated, you don't have to be a pre-diabetic like me to start to have appetite regulation issues, especially if oxalate's in play. So I would really recommend trying to get some of this stuff and try it for when you have one of those sugar cravings. What I liked is that I could satisfy the craving and I felt satisfied and I didn't need more, right? So for many times, if I were to go and have a sweet something, then I just want more. So it doesn't actually satisfy the craving. And that's the big thing for me. So this works completely differently.